Hey, how are you? Stick with it. Um, you will be uplifted because of the Ruach, not me. These prophets are hard to go through because so much of the instruction that you received as a Christian, these are just like little books, or they use the word minor, and that really throws you off. But these 17 prophets, actually, counting the larger books, all the prophets um, in the Old Covenant, will lead to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where Yeshua brings up just exactly what we're talking about several times, including Matthew 24, 23, and 24. Wow. Um, and then John comes in later on. John's letters and scrolls, the Gospel of John, and then John 1, 2, and 3, and then Revelation that he wrote is some of the last books ever printed, and then that was it. There have been none since. Everything else is just historical references, which I keep pointing to, that you use them for historical references and some wisdom points, just like the book of Job, uh, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, um, Song of Songs. That's actually wisdom, although we're talking about an incredible marriage ceremony taking place there. So it ends in chapter 5. So this is my If My People Bible reading 112. And we ended at 5:14. So 5:15. I will take vengeance and anger and wrath upon the nations that have not obeyed me. So has that happened already? Yes and no. But has it happened on the major scale? The woe side, WOEs, the woes that come up in Revelation? No. Woe to any nation that revels in denying Yahweh. Uh, One of the examples I use is Haiti. What an incredible story that the land of Haiti has. Um, it went through incredible times of like 300 years of one nation, 300 years of another nation. And what's the official recognized religion in Haiti? Voodoo. Voodoo is still their national religion. It's a prime example of people who have not repented in these days of writing this commentary. So it's one of the most pathetic nations on the face of the earth, with the most pathetic people going through pathetic times. Yeah, and you got to feel sorry for them. Like, goodness sakes, I mean, they just don't they just don't get the tenet of life itself. They keep rolling in manure and liking it. Um, the Bible makes it very clear not to have saints to pray through on to the Father. A sad comment to so-called Christian religions today that has watered down the definition of what is a Christian. I mean, it's all over the board. That's why I get on the word Christian now and then. I don't call myself a Christian because I can't. I say, well, are you a Christian? Well, you can't use that word because there's 30,000 definitions. And just saying that word, just so if someone understood what a Mormon was in India, and then the next day they would walk up and say, I met a Christian yesterday. Are you a Christian? And I would say, yes. Well, they're thinking, so you don't believe that Yeshua um, is the only begotten Son of the Father? I don't know. And you believe that you're going to inherit kingdoms and planets and solar systems because you're such a good person now? No. And you're going to be, and it goes on and on and on, just on one example. Like, what's Mormonism? They call themselves Christians. They even put the names in their books. Church of Latter Days of Jesus Christ. What? Latter Day Saints? What? And then the added books they put in, Pearl of Great Price? What? Book of Mormon? What? So you can't see, that's what I'm trying to say. You can't use the word Christian. Just like in India, you can't use the word, well, I believe in God. Well, they have 300,000 gods that we know of. And none of them agree with each other. Chapter 6. Verse 7, will Yahweh be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? Now, this is again example of what we've read up so far through all these books in the Old Covenant. Yahweh says, I never asked for this stuff. So why, to my friends who are still stuck in this belief system that the Old Covenant and reading the Torah, only Torah is in the Old Covenant, the from Genesis through Deuteronomy, Numbers, and Leviticus, Exodus, and you're just and I've spent hours and hours with people, and then as I walk out the door, well, thanks, but I still believe what I believe, and I've spent hours and hours with people who say, well, thanks for explaining about Christmas, but I still follow it. Well, thanks. I still like to roll bloody eggs around and have my kids play with the the belief that bunnies lay eggs. Thanks. Oh, and I still like to get drunk on St. Patrick's Day, even though you told me that the day and in Ireland that they didn't do that at all. They actually spent a whole day in repentance for the death of the saint that they believed in Ireland. Had nothing to do with getting drunk and revelry and wearing green and leprechauns. Thanks. When I leave all these doors, I would say 90% of what I'm doing is a total waste of time. I would say that 90% of the world will never come to Yeshua, no matter what anybody does. I would say that. And sadly, I would believe it. But do I hope that? No. I still plan for the worst and hope for the best. Okay. We're going up to 6:14. Kind of read a piece in part there. It gets interesting here. You will eat but not be satisfied. Your stomach will still be empty. These are last days. You will store up but save nothing, because what you save I will give to the sword. You will plant but you won't harvest. You will press olives but not use the oil on yourselves. You will crush grapes and not drink the wine. All these things that people are doing in the last days, when we go through the beginning of the millennium, all that will not be destroyed. There's going to be a lot left. And all the houses and homes that have not been destroyed, there's going to be a lot left. So who's going to get in and move these homes? The 144,000. So they're going to move in the land. They don't have to haul money, cash, debit cards, bitcoins, gold, silver, things to barter with. No, it's all going to be laid out before them, because Yahweh is taking it from the evil of the world and he's given it to those tribes so they can establish themselves. And then the rest of the world, the rest of the sheep, who do not want to follow Torah, old or new. They don't want to read it at all. They just like the happy little stories. I just got off listening to a radio when I was taking a break here on the last download. And the minister was going great for about 30 minutes. But before he ended his 30-minute sermon on the radio, he said this. He said, so here's proof and example that people do come to the Father because... and he's using the proper words. He says, because it says here that people began to call upon the name of the Lord. He was reading back in Genesis. And he thought that was a good thing. I'm thinking, did you really read it? Adam and Eve didn't have to call upon the name of the Lord. They just walked with him and they talked with him. So when it says they began to call upon the name of the Lord, and you already know this because you've been through Genesis. I've explained it to you, right? Because you've been reading this from the beginning to the end, following instructions. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4. And in that I said this. They had to call upon the name of the Lord because they couldn't see him anymore. They couldn't walk with him anymore, and they weren't with him. And that Enos is not a great thing. Being called Enos means weakling, not of the Father, but of a weakling, not what the Father created. In other words, the DNA has already been corrupted in the lineage of Enos. Wow. And I'm thinking, and this minister, and he laid out his his PhD and all his geniuses that he studied all these years, and how perfect he is to be a pastor on there. And by the way, at the end, of course, to send money to his ministry. Wow. In this ministry, the guy who doesn't have a clue what the first book, or the second book, Genesis, is all about. All right. Had to say that. Goodness sakes. Woohoo! Chapter 7. What misery is mine! I am like the one who gathers summer fruit, the glean of a vineyard. There is no cluster of grapes to eat, none of the early figs that I crave. Let's skip down to verse 5. Do not trust a neighbor. Put no confidence in a friend. Even with her who lies in embrace, be careful of your words. For a son dishonors his father. A daughter rises up against her mother. A daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Now I'm in verse 6 of chapter 6. Chapter 7, I'm sorry. 7, verse 6. Man's enemies are members of his own household in the last days. It just doesn't say it here. It says it 2 other places. Take heed. Don't get so depressed, even if your own family members look at you like you're a nut. But as for me, I watch and hope for Yahweh. I wait for Elohim, my Yeshua. My Elohim will hear me. Do not gloat over me, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will rise. Though I sit in darkness, Yahweh will be my light. Because I have sinned against him, I will bear Yahweh's wrath. Until he pleads my case and establishes my right, he will bring me out into the light. I will see his righteousness. Then my enemy will see it and be covered with shame. She who said to me, where is Yahweh? Elohim, my eyes will see her downfall, even though she will be trampled underfoot like a mire in the streets. The day of building your walls will come, the day of extending your boundaries. In that day, people will come to you from Assyria, the cities of Egypt, even from Egypt to the Euphrates, from sea to sea to mountain to mountain. That means from everywhere, the whole world. Here we are in the millennium, folks. We're not in the wrath of Yahweh. We're not in the tribulation. This is the millennium. That's what these prophets are talking about. It's not just a little silly little story. The earth will become desolate, verse 13, as a result of their deeds. Shepherd your people with your staff. That means shepherds will exist. There's your shepherds. The flock of your inheritance. Your inheritance because you stuck firm to the word right now. You're not waiting for Yeshua to come in and slap you upside the head. All right? Which lives by itself in a forest and fertile pasture lands. You're not gathering in large churches. That's what that just said. Let them feed in Bashan and Gilead as in long days ago. As in the days when you came out of Egypt, I will show them my wonders. So there's some incredible things coming, folks. As for everyone else, they're going to lick the ground like a snake. You got to feel empathy, but don't feel no sympathy. You've given your life to these people. You go into homes, and as I said, 9 out of 10 people, when I leave their homes, they could give a rip. Everything I've said is just a joke, and Bruce is just off and left in outer space again. And they're never going to get it. But you've got to give it to them, because you don't know of those 10 homes that you went in that one of them will understand it. One of them will become a shepherd. The rest of them will become wolves or sheep. Verse 20, you will be true to Yaakov and show mercy to Abraham. You will be true to the other tribes. You will be true to the Hebrews. Abraham. As you pledged an oath to our fathers in the days long ago. Comment: for those so-called religious Christians, I have to use the word so-called, who vile you because you do not believe in prosperity doctrines and you shun the false churches. You're thrown out of them and you simply walk away from them or whatever, and teach a remnant of people and just a few in your house at a time, and you're lonely most of the time, and you're on their internet and you're watching streams from other people, like wonderful ones, like giving you an example, Jacob's Tent. That's a good one. Keep the faith, for your Redeemer comes soon. Key point to Micah. The tribe of Judah will repent, will be restored, but only when the ruler of Bethlehem gives them divine blessing, and they are jealous, and they look on the other 11 tribes, and they realize we need to be parts of this I want to be believing in Yeshua, even though I'm Jewish, even though I'm from Judah. I believe in the Messiah, the one who came the first advent and the same coming again.